The jungle was alive with sound. Strange birds called from the high glowing trees, insects hummed in endless patterns, and the air was so thick with heat that every breath felt heavy. Tomasz pushed aside the wide leaves as he walked, his boots sinking into the soft ground. He had been separated from his team hours ago, and the more he tried to find his way back, the deeper the jungle seemed to pull him inside. He wiped his forehead, sweat dripping down into his eyes. The map on his wrist device was broken, showing only static lines. He tried calling on his radio, but it gave nothing but silence. The thought of spending the night alone in this alien place filled him with unease. He had seen shadows moving between the trees, too fast and too silent to be friendly. Tomasz stopped when he heard the sound of rushing water. It was steady, strong, and close. Relief touched his face. Where there was water, there might be safety. He pushed through another line of trees until he came to a clearing. There it was, a waterfall, tall and shining in the last light of day. The water dropped into a deep pool and then slipped into the jungle again like a silver snake. Behind the curtain of falling water, Tomasz saw the dark shape of a cave. His heart lifted. A cave meant shelter. Somewhere to hide from the predators and the cold rain clouds that were gathering in the sky. He hurried closer, climbing over wet rocks until he slipped behind the waterfall. The roar of water drowned out the jungle's cries, wrapping him in a wall of sound. The cave was larger than he expected. Cool mist filled the air, making the place feel almost peaceful. He stepped inside, but then he froze. Someone was already there. A figure moved in the shadows, tall and slim, with skin that caught the glow of the water in strange patterns. Her eyes, bright and clear like pieces of crystal, fixed on him with sharp caution. She was not human. Tomasz's breath caught in his chest. He had heard of her people, the native researchers of this planet, but he had never stood so close to one before. The alien woman straightened, holding a long staff in her hand. Her voice was quiet but firm. "This cave is taken." Tomasz lifted his hand slowly, showing he had no weapon. "I don't mean harm," he said, speaking carefully, hoping she could understand. "I only need shelter. The jungle is too dangerous tonight." For a long moment, she did not move. The waterfall roared behind them, filling the silence. Finally, she lowered her staff but did not relax her watchful gaze. "You are human," she said at last, her words slow, as though she was still learning the sound. "Yes," Tomasz answered. "My name is Tomasz. I am lost." The woman studied him, her expression unreadable. Her eyes flicked to the pack on his back, the tired lines on his face, the cuts on his arms from the jungle's sharp branches. Something in her gaze softened for a second, though her posture remained guarded. "You may stay," she said finally. "But only near the entrance." Relief washed over Tomasz. He nodded gratefully and set his pack down on a dry rock. He sat, his body aching from the long walk. For the first time that day, he felt a thin thread of safety. The woman moved further into the cave, sitting near a small fire she had built from dried vines. They did not speak much after that. Tomasz simply watched the flames and listened to the waterfall's endless song. Still, he felt her eyes on him now and then, cautious but curious. As darkness fell over the jungle, Tomasz realized something strange. Though the cave was not truly his, though the woman beside the fire was a stranger from another world, he no longer felt completely alone. The jungle outside was still wild, still dangerous, but here in the heart of the waterfall cave, something had shifted. Two souls, from different worlds, had crossed paths. Neither trusted the other fully yet, but both understood one truth: survival in this green maze would be easier together than apart. And so the night began, with the roar of water, the glow of fire, and two quiet figures who did not yet know how much their fates had already changed. The cave was cool, but the air between Tomasz and Myra was heavy with silence. The waterfall outside roared like an endless drum, its spray floating into the cave as a fine mist. Tomasz sat near the entrance as he had promised, while the alien woman Myra, as he had learned when she finally shared her name, remained close to her fire deeper inside. He tried to rest, but his stomach growled, reminding him how long it had been since he last ate. Reaching into his pack, he pulled out a wrapped meal bar. He hesitated, then broke it in half. Carefully, he stood and took a few steps closer. Myra's eyes lifted sharply, her hand tightening on her staff. Food, Tomasz said slowly, holding out the bar. For you. Myra tilted her head, studying the strange object. Her people lived off the jungle's fruits and roots, but the bar smelled different, sweet and rich. After a pause, she reached out, her long fingers brushing his hand as she accepted it. She sniffed it first, then took a small bite. Her expression did not change much, but her eyes softened. You share, she said quietly. Tomasz smiled faintly and sat back down. Humans share. It makes us stronger. Myra looked at him for a long moment before nodding. She did not speak again, but she finished the piece slowly, as if the taste surprised her. The fire crackled softly, filling the space with warmth. Tomasz rubbed his tired eyes, listening to the jungle outside. Strange cries echoed through the trees, low growls that reminded him how lucky he was to have found this cave. Why are you here? Myra's voice broke the quiet at last. Tomasz blinked, surprised she had spoken first. My team was exploring. We were mapping the jungle. I lost them in the storm yesterday. I tried to find them, but this place is like a maze. Myra's gaze flicked to the cave wall as if she was remembering her own journey. The jungle does not forgive the careless, she said softly. You too? Tomasz asked. Her eyes narrowed slightly, but then she nodded. I was with others. We studied the river paths. But the storm came. The ground broke apart. I fell far from them. I searched, but found no trail. For the first time, Tomasz saw more than caution in her eyes. He saw loneliness, an emotion he understood all too well. Silence fell again, but it was different now. Not as sharp. Tomasz moved closer to the fire, warming his hands. Myra did not stop him this time. He reached into his pack again and pulled out a small tool, two pieces of metal that sparked when struck together. Myra tilted her head curiously. Watch, Tomasz said, striking the stones. Sparks jumped out, glowing for an instant before fading. Myra's eyes widened. She leaned closer, fascinated by the tiny burst of light. You make fire from stone, she whispered. Tomasz chuckled. It's simple. You want to try? He handed the tool to her. She held it awkwardly at first, then struck it against the rock. A small shower of sparks leapt out. Her lips parted slightly, almost forming a smile. Strange human tricks, she said. Useful tricks, Tomasz corrected, grinning. For the first time, Myra's face softened with amusement. It was a small change, but Tomasz felt it. The wall between them had thinned. The night grew deeper, the jungle outside echoing with restless life. Myra fed more vines into the fire, and Tomasz leaned against the cave wall, finally able to breathe easier. Still, a question lingered in his mind: when the storm ended, and if they both found their people again, what would happen? Would this fragile bond vanish as quickly as it formed? But for now, as the firelight danced across the cave walls and the waterfall's steady song drowned the fears of the night, Tomasz felt something rare: peace. Myra, sitting across from him, kept her staff close, but her eyes no longer carried only suspicion. There was curiosity now, and maybe even a small seed of trust. Neither spoke again before sleep claimed them, but both knew a silent truth: the jungle was merciless, yet in its heart, they had found something unexpected: company. And perhaps, in time, something more. Morning light spilled through the waterfall, sending bright silver ripples across the cave walls. Tomasz woke first, stretching his sore arms. The jungle air was damp and heavy, but inside the cave, it felt calm. Across the fire, Myra sat with her eyes half closed, sharpening the end of her staff with a smooth stone. She looked alert, but her body carried the quiet stillness of someone used to waiting. "Morning," Tomasz said softly, unsure if she would reply. Her eyes opened, clear and sharp. "Morning," she repeated, her voice calm, almost testing the word. Tomasz smiled faintly. She had practiced his language more during the night. That small effort gave him hope. His stomach rumbled, reminding him how hungry he was. From his pack, he pulled out another meal bar and offered it. Myra studied it again but accepted without hesitation this time. She broke it into 2 pieces and handed half back to him. "You share," she said, echoing his words from before. Tomasz chuckled. "Yes. Always." The fire was nearly out, so he showed her the spark tool again. Myra leaned closer, striking the stones carefully until sparks flew. She fed dried vines into the glow, and soon the fire was alive again. She looked pleased, her expression almost bright. "You learn fast," Tomasz said. "I listen." "I watch," Myra replied. She tapped her staff lightly on the ground. "The jungle teaches. If not, you die." Her words were simple, but Tomasz felt their weight. This jungle was cruel, yet here they were alive, sharing warmth. Later, they decided to search near the cave for more supplies. Tomasz walked carefully over the wet rocks, while Myra moved silently, her feet almost floating above the earth. She pointed out plants with broad red leaves. "Poison," she warned. Then she guided him toward trees with hanging golden fruits. "Safe," she said, cutting one down with her staff. Tomasz bit into the fruit, juice dripping down his chin. It was sweet, refreshing, better than the dry rations in his pack. He laughed, wiping his mouth. Myra tilted her head at the sound, as if trying to understand the meaning of his laughter. "Good," Tomasz said, holding up the fruit. Myra nodded slowly, then, after a pause, tried the word herself. "Good." They carried what they could back to the cave. Along the way, Tomasz tripped on a root, nearly falling into the mud. Myra caught his arm quickly, steadying him. Her grip was firm, her touch careful. For a moment, they both froze. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Then she released him, stepping back with quiet grace. Back at the cave, Tomasz used some vines to weave a rough mat on the stone floor. Myra watched him, curious. "Humans make things," she said. "We have to," Tomasz answered, tying the vines. "It makes life easier." Myra crouched beside him, watching his hands. After a moment, she reached out and copied his movements. Her fingers were more delicate, but she learned quickly. Together, they built 2 small mats. When they finished, Myra looked at her work with quiet pride. "Not bad," Tomasz said with a grin. "Not bad," she repeated, almost smiling. As the sun set, the jungle outside came alive with calls and distant roars. They sat near the fire, eating fruit and listening to the waterfall's steady voice. Tomasz felt the tension between them slowly changing. Myra no longer held her staff so tightly. Her shoulders seemed lighter. "You humans," Myra said at last, her voice thoughtful. "You laugh. Even here, in danger." "Why?" Tomasz thought for a moment. "Because if we don't laugh, we break. It is how we stay strong." Myra considered this. Her eyes softened, and she nodded slowly, as if she was beginning to understand. That night, as they lay on their new mats, Tomasz listened to the waterfall and the rhythm of Myra's quiet breathing. For the first time since he was lost, he did not feel afraid of the jungle. In the heart of the cave, under the endless roar of water, trust had begun to spark between them. It was fragile, but it was real, like fire born from stone. The sky had been heavy all day. Thick clouds pressed low over the jungle, and the air grew heavier with each passing hour. By evening, the first drops of rain slid down the leaves outside the cave. Soon, the drops became sheets of water, pouring down so hard that even the roar of the great waterfall was nearly drowned by the storm. Inside the cave, Tomasz and Myra watched in silence. The air was damp and cool, but the sound of the storm carried a strange weight. It felt as if the whole jungle was holding its breath. "The river will rise," Myra said quietly, her eyes fixed on the water outside. "Too much rain. It will flood." Tomasz looked at her sharply. "Flood? Here?" Myra nodded once. "Not all, but low ground. Parts of cave too." Tomasz moved quickly, gathering his pack and the food they had collected. Myra stood as well, adding vines and dried wood to the pile. The fire sputtered and hissed as the damp air filled the cave. Soon, water began to creep across the floor, sliding between the rocks in thin streams. Tomasz glanced at Myra, and without words, they started to move deeper into the cave, searching for higher ground. The path was rough, narrow in places, and the stone floor slick with mist. Tomasz slipped once, catching himself on the wall. Myra steadied him, her hand firm on his shoulder. They pressed on until they found a small rise where the water could not reach. There, they sat again, watching as the lower part of the cave slowly filled with dark water. The fire was gone, drowned by the flood. Only the glow from Tomasz's small lamp gave them light. Myra's face looked pale in the dim glow, her eyes fixed on the rising water. Tomasz could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers gripped her staff. "You've seen this before," he said softly. She turned her eyes to him, and for a moment she looked far away, lost in memory. "Yes. Once. Many rains ago. My people camped near river. We thought it safe." She paused, her voice lowering. "Water rose fast. Too fast. We lost many." Tomasz felt his chest tighten. He had known fear before, but to lose people, to watch them taken by something as simple and merciless as water, it was a pain he could only imagine. "I'm sorry," he said gently. Myra did not answer right away. She looked back at the water, her jaw set, but her eyes glimmered in the dim light. At last, she spoke again. "Since then, I do not trust the rains. The jungle takes without warning. Tomasz leaned back against the wall, letting her words sink into him. He wanted to say something more, something that could ease the weight in her voice, but he knew there were no simple answers. Instead, he did what humans did best: he listened. The storm outside raged on. The cave echoed with thunder, and shadows shifted across the walls. Yet in that small space, Tomasz and Myra sat side by side, closer than before. After a long silence, Tomasz spoke quietly. "Where I come from, storms are hard too. But we find ways to protect each other. We build, we help, we don't leave anyone behind. That is how we live." Myra turned her head slightly, studying him. There was doubt in her eyes, but also curiosity. "Always help? Even if danger great?" Tomasz nodded without hesitation. "Especially then." For a moment, neither moved. The sound of the rain filled the air, and the glow from the lamp flickered. Then Myra let out a slow breath, and some of the tension in her shoulders seemed to ease. "You are strange, human," she said softly. "Strange, but strong." Tomasz gave a small smile. "I think the same about you." The storm raged for hours, but the water stopped rising before it reached their place of safety. As the night dragged on, Tomasz fought sleep, watching the shadows dance on the walls. Myra leaned her staff beside her and sat quietly, her eyes no longer filled with only caution. Though the jungle storm had shaken them, it had also brought something new: an unspoken closeness. In the heart of the rain and the shadows, Myra had let him see a piece of her pain, and Tomasz had answered with nothing more than patience and care. It was a small thing, but in this wild and merciless world, it was enough to keep hope alive. The storm had finally passed. By morning, the jungle air was fresh, filled with the smell of wet leaves and earth. The waterfall roared as always, but now it carried more power, swollen from the night's rain. The cave was damp, but the water had begun to sink back into the ground, leaving behind a silence that felt almost gentle. Tomasz stretched his arms, sore from sitting on the hard stone. He glanced at Myra, who sat nearby, watching the water with calm eyes. Her staff rested at her side, and for the first time, she looked less like a guard and more like a companion. They spent the day gathering fruit and checking their supplies. The jungle was still dangerous, but they moved with better rhythm now. Myra pointed out safe paths and hidden dangers, while Tomasz carried most of the load and kept watch for predators. Though they spoke little, their movements were in tune, as if they had already learned how to survive together. By evening, they sat inside the cave again, a new fire flickering between them. The flames painted soft light across the stone walls, and the roar of the waterfall outside filled the silence. Tomasz leaned back against the wall, tired but peaceful. Myra sat across from him, her eyes fixed on the fire. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Tomasz broke the quiet. "This cave, it feels alive," he said. "Like it has a heartbeat." Myra tilted her head. "Heartbeat?" He placed his hand on his chest. "Here. When we are afraid, or when we feel strong. It beats." Myra's eyes flickered with understanding. She listened to the roar of the waterfall, the crackle of the fire, and the faint rhythm of water drops falling from the ceiling. After a moment, she nodded slowly. "Yes. The cave beats. Slow, strong. Like the jungle itself." They both sat in silence again, listening. The sound was steady, almost calming. It wrapped around them like an invisible thread. Tomash pulled something from his pack, a small picture, worn from travel. Myra leaned closer to see. It showed a group of humans, smiling together under a bright Sunday. My family, Tomash explained softly. Back on my world. I carry this so I don't forget. Myra studied the faces. Their expressions were warm, their eyes shining with joy. They look full of light, she said. They are, Tomash replied. Humans live for each other. Even when far apart, we carry those we love here. He tapped his chest. Myra's gaze softened. She looked away, her voice quieter. My people do not keep pictures. We remember in songs, in stories. But I have not sung in a long time. Tomash leaned forward slightly. Why not? Her eyes lowered, shadows crossing her face. When the rains took my people, the songs broke. Alone, there was no reason to sing. The firelight flickered between them, and Tomash felt a weight in his heart. He wanted to say the right words, but instead, he only spoke gently. Maybe the reason will return. Sometimes, we find it again when we least expect it. For a long moment, Myra did not answer. Then, almost too soft to hear, she hummed a low note. It rose and fell like the whisper of the jungle wind. Tomash listened, his eyes wide. The sound carried both sorrow and hope, wrapping around the cave like the heartbeat he had spoken of. When she stopped, the silence felt deeper than before. That was beautiful, Tomash said quietly. Myra's eyes met his. For the first time, there was no wall between them. Only a shared understanding of loss, and of something slowly being rebuilt. The fire burned low, shadows dancing across the cave walls. Tomash felt his chest tighten with words he had not meant to speak, but they came anyway. Myra, these days here, they mean something to me. More than the maps, more than the mission. I don't feel lost anymore, not when you're here. Myra's gaze held his, steady and unreadable at first. Then, slowly, her features softened. You are strange, human, she whispered. But when you speak, the cave feels warm. They sat like that, in silence, with only the fire and the waterfall's endless rhythm filling the air. The jungle outside was vast and dangerous, but in that moment, the cave truly did have a heartbeat, a shared one, steady and alive between them. The jungle was alive with danger. Even in daylight, shadows moved between the trees like whispers. Tomash and Myra had grown used to the sounds, but today something felt different. The birds were silent, the insects quiet, and the air seemed heavier than usual. Tomash adjusted the straps of his pack, his eyes scanning the edges of the clearing. Something is wrong, he said quietly. Myra's eyes narrowed. She stepped forward, her staff in hand. Predator, she whispered. Big. Clever. Tomash swallowed. He had faced wild animals before, but this jungle was unlike any he had known. Its creatures were quick, silent, and unpredictable. What do we do? He asked. Myra gestured toward the cave. We stay together. Alone, we are weak. Together, we can outsmart it. They moved cautiously, side by side, their steps silent over wet rocks and fallen leaves. Every rustle made them freeze. Every shadow made their hearts race. The predator was near. Tomash could feel it, the jungle holding its breath. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the trees. It was closer than they expected. Myra raised her staff defensively. Tomash picked up a heavy branch, ready to defend them. The creature stepped into view, a massive, feline-like predator with sleek dark fur and bright, watchful eyes. Tomash froze. The animal crouched, muscles tensed, ready to pounce. Myra whispered instructions quickly. "Do not run. We move together. Slow, calm." They obeyed, inching toward the cave entrance. The predator stalked them, eyes never leaving their movements. Tomash felt the pounding of his heart, but he focused on Myra's calm voice, following her lead. A rock slipped under his foot, sending a small spray of water. The predator's head snapped toward them, its growl louder. Myra stepped in front, raising her staff. Tomash followed, ready to support her. The predator lunged, but Myra and Tomash moved in perfect timing, dodging to the side. Tomash swung the branch to distract it. The predator swiped, but missed. Myra struck the ground with her staff, making a sharp sound that startled the animal. It paused, assessing the humans, unsure. "Together!" Myra shouted. They ran in unison toward the deeper part of the cave. Water from the waterfall sprayed over them, making the rocks slippery. Tomash's boots slipped, but Myra's hand shot out, gripping his arm and steadying him. The predator hesitated, unsure whether to follow into the misty cave. Breathing hard, Tomash and Myra reached a higher ledge, safe for the moment. The predator prowled at the entrance, frustrated, then slowly retreated into the jungle, its golden eyes never leaving them. Tomash collapsed on the ledge, sweat dripping down his face. Myra sat beside him, her breathing heavy but controlled. "You saved yourself," she said quietly. "You helped too," Tomash replied, meeting her gaze. His heart was still racing, but he felt something stronger now, a bond. They had survived together, relying not only on skill but on trust. Myra looked at him differently, her earlier caution replaced by respect. "You do not run from danger," she said. "You face it? Even when afraid?" Tomash smiled faintly. "Humans survive. But not alone. We need others." Myra nodded slowly. "I understand now." For a long while, they sat on the ledge, listening to the waterfall, letting the adrenaline fade. The jungle outside remained wild and untamed, but inside the cave, something had shifted. The fear that had pressed so heavily on their hearts was replaced by understanding. They had faced the predator and lived. Not just by strength or instinct, but by trusting each other. Tomash realized then that the jungle was teaching them more than survival. It was teaching them cooperation, courage, and the quiet power of human connection. As night fell, the firelight flickered across their faces. Tomash looked at Myra and saw the faintest hint of a smile. "We are ready for anything," he said. Myra's eyes met his. "Yes," she replied softly. "Together." The waterfall's roar continued, steady and strong. But inside the cave, Tomash and Myra felt something stronger, the heartbeat of trust, courage, and a bond that could survive even the wildest dangers of the jungle. Morning broke softly over the jungle. The sun filtered through the leaves, casting golden light on the wet ground and the silver spray of the waterfall. Tomash and Myra stood near the mouth of the cave, looking out at the jungle they had learned to survive in. The water flowed steadily, its roar echoing like a heartbeat that had carried them through storms, predators, and long nights of uncertainty. Tomash adjusted the straps of his pack and turned to Myra. "The rescue team should be coming soon," he said. "We don't need to stay hidden anymore." Myra's eyes studied him, calm but thoughtful. "And yet, this place has changed us," she said softly. "I am not the same I was when I entered the cave." Nor are you. Tomasz nodded. No. I've learned more than I expected. About the jungle, about you, and about myself. She looked at him, her bright eyes reflecting the sunlight. For a moment, the world seemed to fall away. The roar of the waterfall, the green canopy, even the dangers of the jungle all faded into the background. Only the quiet understanding between them remained. You taught me trust, Myra said finally. Even when I did not know how. And you taught me patience, Tomasz replied. And how to see what is important, beyond maps or missions. They smiled, a small but genuine connection that had grown through every challenge they had faced. The bond formed in fear, in survival, and in shared moments of hope had become something neither could ignore. From the jungle behind them, distant voices called shouts of the rescue team finally finding their trail. Tomasz glanced over his shoulder. Relief washed over him. They had survived together, and now, the human and the alien had a chance to leave the cave alive. Yet, neither moved immediately. Tomasz reached out and took Myra's hand. It was a small gesture, but full of meaning. Myra looked down at their joined hands, then up at him. She did not pull away. You do not need to let go, Tomasz said softly. Myra nodded slowly. No. Perhaps, we do not. The team was approaching, their figures moving through the jungle like small shadows against the bright green. Tomasz and Myra stood side by side, ready to face the next step together. As the first rescuers entered the clearing, Tomasz and Myra stepped forward. The team paused in surprise at seeing both the human and the alien together, alive and unharmed. But Tomasz did not hesitate to explain, gesturing toward Myra. We survived because we worked together, he said simply. Because we trusted each other. Myra's gaze met his. She nodded slightly, proud, yet humble. The jungle had tested them in every way: storms, predators, isolation, and they had passed. Not by strength alone, but by cooperation, understanding, and courage. The rescue team guided them back through the jungle. Every step felt lighter than before, the lessons of the cave still fresh in their minds. Tomasz and Myra walked side by side, their bond unspoken but undeniable. Each glance, each small gesture, carried the memory of nights spent by the fire, the sound of water crashing outside, and the quiet moments of trust they had shared. Finally, they reached a high clearing, the view stretching across the jungle. Sunlight glinted off distant rivers, and the air smelled of life and possibility. Tomasz and Myra stopped, taking a deep breath together. Beyond this jungle, Tomasz said quietly, there is more waiting for us. More to explore, together. Myra smiled, a small curve of her lips that held warmth and hope. Yes. Together, she repeated. They stepped forward, leaving the cave and the waterfall behind. But the heartbeat of the jungle, the lessons of trust and courage, and the bond they had formed would remain with them forever. As they walked into the sunlight, the waterfall's roar faded behind them, replaced by the songs of birds and the soft wind through the trees. Yet, for Tomasz and Myra, the real adventure had just begun, not in maps or missions, but in the shared journey of two hearts, human and alien, discovering the strength of connection, trust, and love. Together, they moved beyond the waterfall, beyond the dangers, and into a future filled with hope, courage, and the quiet magic of survival and understanding.